Okay, hi Zach.
Hello.
We've got Zach here. He's 22 years old from Cardiff. You are from Cardiff, aren't you?
I am from Cardiff, yes.
He's a sociology student in Exeter. And our first guest, or my first guest, on Destigmatized.
Hello, everyone.
I'm so proud of the name, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I know Zach through our friend Hannah. She's our mutual friend. And I've heard really good things, so I'm really excited to speak with you. So, yeah, today we're going to be talking about mental health, obviously, and specifically OCD, which I think is good for our first episode because OCD is actually what I have, and I think that's a good way to start because I'm not just here to psychoanalyze loads of people. I'm actually here just to talk about things that are important to a lot of us. So the first question for Zach is, how have you been affected by mental health?
Well, big question. Well, I mean, having OCD as well, it's something, the earliest I can remember mental health really affecting me is when I was 13 and wasn't actually aware of it really affecting me then, but I used to compulsively wash my hands like 100 times a day. Every night I would go into my mum's room being like, oh, like, am I gonna die? Like, I touched something and I didn't wash my hands after it, and then I touched my hand, like, it was horrendous. But then after that, it wasn't until I like started to come to terms with like my sexuality that like that's when like mental health really started to like take its toll on me. And then since I was about 18, it's kind of been like a persistent thing that I wouldn't necessarily say I'm struggling with anymore, but like something has challenged me.
Yeah, so it's like something that you kind of live with. But I don't know, for you, I'm always thinking about this question, like, would you call yourself a sufferer of mental illness or just like someone who's living with mental illness?
No. I think I'm not sure I like using the word suffering for myself because it kind of feels that I wouldn't necessarily say I'm suffering with it now. I live with it, and it has made me suffer, but it's not an ongoing thing making me suffer. It's kind of, I've accepted that it's kind of part of me, I guess.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like when I'm reading articles and stuff about OCD, which is clearly my favourite topics, I noticed that lots of people try not to use that word, sufferer, but sometimes like when I'm writing, I find it like I keep saying individuals with OCD. So it's just interesting to see what people think.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I think maybe when I was younger, like 18, 19, I would have said I was suffering because back then it kind of, because when it was all kind of fresh with like the whole OCD and getting like intrusive thoughts, it was very fresh in my head and kind of felt like it was like, this is what I'm going to be like forever now. So it was like quite daunting thinking of the future. But now that I've like kind of matured with it, I guess, I don't see it as much like that anymore.
Yeah, so how would you say that you're affected by it in the here and now? So obviously in the past it was hand washing, or like the first memory of it. If you don't mind, can you go into a bit of how it's progressed and then how you've got to a place now where you'd say you weren't, suffering asthma? Yeah,
sure. So right now, oh sorry, there was a bee just like flew at my window. Right now, I'd say it's, not so much at the moment, but like I suffer quite bad with like hypochondria, which is definitely like ingrained in OCD. Like I'll have like a heart palpitation and then my mind will rush to you're dying, or like something will happen, like I don't know, I'll just get a tingle and be like, yep, you're having a stroke, and like so that's like kind of like my thing at the moment. I think that's the best way to describe it. Like it's, you have like a thing. It's like your OCD has its own like possession, I guess. And sometimes it's like your health. Sometimes it's like intrusive thoughts about other things. But yeah, so
yeah, definitely. I think for me it's been like always a different theme since I was about, I don't know, with the intrusive thoughts, I think since I was about 12 or 13. But before then, I was definitely doing some like compulsions when I was like 7. I
yeah.
always used to like click my hands like against my face, like, and it was like something that my teacher was like, "What the fuck are you doing in year 2?" And I was like, "I don't know." But yeah, over like the years it changed, and then when I was like 12, 13, it would be more of the like taboo, like dark kind of themes.
Yeah.
That obviously I've learned since then that everyone has these like kind of intrusive thoughts, but what marks it as a disorder is when like your brain won't let go of it and you keep having to like ruminate. And then most of my compulsions since about 12 were all very internal.
Yeah.
So no one actually could tell that, you know, I was just, like suffering inside with these thoughts. So yeah, it's interesting how it can, like you said with the themes, it can just take anything and run with it and cause like so much anxiety.
I think the one I used to get before I got diagnosed with OCD, because I got diagnosed with OCD when I was like 19, I think. Yeah, 19, I'm going to say. And it was just, I always, like, OCD has always picked on relationships for me. And anytime, like, I'll get into a relationship and it gets too serious, my mind will kind of be like, no. It was like, you hate this person, like, you think they're disgusting. And then, like, that's all I'll be able to think about. It's like, oh, should I be with this person? But that, like, before having the words OCD, it was, like, the most, like, scary, like, weird, confusing thing ever. And it kind of got me to a place where I was like, I'm never going to find someone to be with because this is always going to happen. And then I think being diagnosed with OCD definitely made it a lot better. But
yeah, actually, I hadn't thought about that as a kind of a question, but even though, you know, we may not call ourselves sufferers, just like individuals living with something, getting the label for me was so helpful. Like, probably one of the most kind of defining points in my life, like, that I can think off the top of my head, because it just kind of uncovered so much of what I'd been dealing with, but just didn't have words for. And so yeah, was your kind of label and like understanding that it was OCD helpful for you?
Yeah, I think because it wasn't the relationships thing that got me diagnosed, because that ended, and then it started off on took a bit of a dark turn, let's say.
Let's just say, yeah. Doesn't it always? Yeah, for me.
I remember like the exact, like, it's weird, like I can remember the exact place I was when like my mind went. It was like, what if it was just something along the lines of like being a psychopath, and then like that just spiraled me. But I remember going to a therapist because I was too afraid to even tell my mum what my thoughts were saying. And she was like, yeah, let's get therapy. And then I did, and then they were like, yeah, like you're showing classic signs of OCD. And it was just instantly that like thing that's like was this massive drop in everything, and it was just nice. There's that on top of, I had do you know OCD Action, the website?
Yeah,
that around that time helped me out massively as well, and like helped me identify with what I was going through.
God, yeah, I love OCD Action. They were like the first people I called when I realised it was OCD, because yeah, like I said, I was kind of just suffering in silence because I actually didn't know what was going on. And that was like what I call the worst point in my life, because I just couldn't understand why I was having these like torturous thoughts just coming back and back and back, like quite often with a similar theme or even like an image. And it was just like horrendous because I didn't know what was going on. And I knew it wasn't like hallucinations. Obviously, you'll know this, but it's like in your head, like you can still see everything. You know it's a thought, and you know like it's not really a reflection of you, but like just a lot of you worries that it is. Or at least in my experience. So yeah, like when I finally kind of looked it up, it was only a year and a half ago when I like properly looked it up and was like, what is going on with me? So it's just in the darkest, like lowest point. And that's when I like realized it was OCD, and I was like, oh, like it was such a relief reading that.
Yeah.
And then I went on their website and called them, and they were like amazing, their free helpline. And but what's different in my experience of therapy is that I'd started to like go to this therapist in Leeds for a study, and because I couldn't get to like the top of the waiting list on the NHS, I just started using the money I was like earning at the bakery that I worked at to go to this to like every week just saying that to go to this therapist. And she was like a lovely woman, but she had no idea about OCD, so she just would like psychoanalyze me and each thought, and it just didn't help. Obviously, it's like the most powerful thing you can do, because with OCD, obviously, you know this, you need a therapist who specializes, not just a psychoanalyst. Otherwise it all just goes downhill. So yeah, that was, I ended up going to a better place and kind of sorting myself out, but that was just not the way. So if anyone's got intrusive thoughts and like symptoms of OCD, don't go to a regular therapist.
Oh no, I actually had like a very like similar thing happen. My first experience of a therapist was actually mortifying. Because I come from quite a religious family, so my parents sent me into like a spiritual therapist, and so I was like, yeah, sure, like I'll give it a try. Went, and then this woman was like, do you believe in God? And I was like, still kind of like questioning my religion, so I was like, yeah, I do. And then she was like, okay, well, and I told her everything that was going on, like the dark thoughts, and she just fully went on like telling me that that's what I was. Like she was saying like, you need to pray you need to pray and like hope that they'll go away. And then she was like, can I pray for you? And then I was like, yeah. And she was like, sorry if I start speaking in tongues. And like I was just there like crying. I was like, I have to leave. And I left, and then my mum was like, how was it? And I was like, never again. And then we found a really good one, and then I stuck with her. Like the thing with, I think that's the thing, it's important to remember with therapy is that if you don't like your first therapist, don't give up, because it takes a while to find one that's like perfect for you. And I think that's the mistake people usually give up on therapy so early on, because like it hasn't worked for them once.
Yeah, it's the same with, I did the same with mindfulness. Like I started it and it didn't work for me because at that point I hadn't had any actual CBT or exposure therapy, which are like what's proven for OCD, and started on this like meditation mindfulness path that just, because I didn't have the other stuff in place, after I'd been introduced to the other stuff and practiced it a bit, like the therapy side, then the mindfulness stuff came in really like handy for me, and that's what I use now. Now I'm in Japan as well, so I think that it's important, just to like try again. And obviously a lot of people, like when I was on the NHS waiting list, and like whenever you're trying to get therapy or see a psychiatrist, it's obviously such like a difficult process, and it can make like that was one of the most hopeless I felt, was leaving a GP in Leeds, because, or a nurse, but whatever, at this practice, because they couldn't like help me, and they couldn't give me anything quickly other than drugs. And at that point I just needed more. So I think that, if you're on a waiting list, you can like call the services that are free, like OCD Action and others, and try and find, keep trying to fight your cause, because it's just like it can get better, is the main thing. And what information is like important for you, do you think, to get out there for anyone watching?
I guess in regards to OCD, I'd say, I think, because I find it a really hard one, because I think OCD generally, it's one of those things that people use very like nonchalantly, like, oh yeah, I'm so OCD about having my files neat. I think it's just like helping people understand that OCD is just a lot more than cleaning, and like you're not just cleaning because you want, like, I think people don't necessarily understand why people are cleaning and like why they're doing these things. It's not because a lot of the time it's not because they're I'm not going to like talk for everyone, but a lot of the time it's like not because they want to be like want things to be clean, but it's just because to take their mind off like the intrusive thoughts that are happening. And I think there's more education around the intrusive thoughts aspect, because like it's a hard one to talk about. Like I'm always so wary about like actually giving the nature of the like intrusive thoughts to anyone, because I'm just afraid of what they'll say and like whether they'll actually think I'm a psychopath or like something.
Yeah, I agree with that, because even the people I was closer to when I was in that like really dark, low place, I just didn't feel like I could speak about what was going on in my head, because at that point I just didn't understand why that would happen. I knew it didn't align with like who I was or my values, but I couldn't talk about it. But I think that I just know that, at the time it would have helped if I'd gone to an OCD specialist and then just spoke it all out loud, which is what I ended up doing. But I suppose it is like important to make sure that you are calling OCD Action or speaking to someone who understands, and just so you don't get misdiagnosed, because that's a big thing. But yeah, like you said, like the spreading the awareness that it's intrusive thoughts and compulsions that make OCD, that like the obsessions, the intrusive thoughts are what drive the compulsion. I think I've been looking recently at some articles about how it's always like presented on TV as just like a compulsion, like just compulsions, like the visual aspects, like hand washing, cleaning. And I don't know if there's like an agenda behind that, or if it's just because it's difficult to show the intrusions and the obsessions that go on inside that drive that. But whether or not it's purposeful or not, it's obviously created this really false, like misleading narrative that OCD is all about the compulsions, and no one's understanding like the severity of the anxiety and the intrusions. But I think that, have you seen Pure on Channel 4 on Netflix?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's like the best thing I've ever seen in terms of like trails of OCD.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she has like sexual obsession and thoughts, and they're actually shown, for the first time I've seen on TV anyway, they're actually shown, her obsessions and intrusive thoughts are shown visually, which is like, I keep telling people to watch that if they ask me if I can explain it, because whilst that's not my story word for word, the book of that Pure is a lot more like my story, and it's quite tiring like to tell people what exactly it is. So that show, anyone who's watching, go and watch that. It's on Netflix.
I'll write it down.
Yeah, you watch it too. So probably the last question, although I could talk to you for hours, is there anything you'd like to discuss openly now, like still to destigmatize mental illness, or anything you've got to say?
I guess one thing that I actually thought about while I was talking with my friend the other day is that I think there's a lot of emphasis put on talking. There's a lot of emphasis put on like talk to people, like talk to your friends. But I think there needs to be a lot more emphasis on listening as well. Like being able to listen to someone is such a like powerful thing. And I think often I've had it before when I've gone to people to talk to them. I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm going through this, and then they'll kind of be like, oh yeah, I'm having a bad time as well, which is obviously like, yeah, sure, they're having a bad time, but I think like, because I think it's a fallacy to say like it's true that someone will listen to you if you talk to them. But I think because people do get rejected a lot when they try and open up about it, I think it's really important that we pull the narrative for the people who aren't going through mental health, that they are like empathetic and willing to listen to people more, and like be able to like I think we should be teaching people I think it should be like put into our education that we should like how to pick up on like cues that people want to open up and like things like that. Yeah,
that's really true actually, because when I think about the first few people I opened up to, it's not always. I actually got it used against me once as well, right at the very beginning, which was lovely. But I think that, yeah, it's really important to talk to people you trust. And if someone does, use it against you or whatever, just know that they're the one that's insecure and just try again with someone else. And, you know, it's always their responsibility to tell you if they can't hear it, they're not in the right place, and you can go to someone else or a therapist. But I think, it's really important that we learn, like, listening skills, because even I, when I'm listening to people, sometimes want to be like, yeah, I agree, but like some people just need you to listen, don't they? Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Zach. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this a lot.